for stopping by the channel. My name's Leah, and let's recap and review the final episode of season 12 for Real Housewives of New Jersey. This is the third part of the reunion. They could have kept it, but let's get into it. So y'all know if I got some, a little bit of juice, we talk about it before we get into it. The episode. So this popped up on my timeline and I wanted to share it with you. It's basically a little clip or a 1 minute and 30-second clip of Joe and Melissa on Melissa's podcast on display talking about how they feel like Teresa should be thanking them for keeping the show afloat while she went to prison. So y'all listen to this and then we gonna get
except for me. Okay, I was the last housewife standing, but we were recasting the show. So the twins were then leaving, and Amber, they did a one and done, right?
Which was a horrible season.
There was not one other person on the show except for Teresa and I that were going to come back. So there's a piece of me, and then having you and our family, right? How about being grateful that Joe and I, right, or that we're still here, and we kept the core of that show together so that when she got out, we were able to cast all of these new people, right? Because I think it was Siggy and then Margaret and it was all new. Everybody knew. And it was we kept the core of this show going, or else it would have just turned into the show that she had for 3 episodes, which was the Teresa Went to Prison show, which Joe Giudice did on his own.
You're being too nice, honey.
I'm trying to be nice.
Well, you're being nice. How about thank you? Because when she's in prison, Joe wasn't working at all either. So they had no income.
Right.
If we weren't on the show, their kids would not still be living in that house and have food and have whatever they had. How about
also
thank you?
Joe needed to make money on that show, and he needed someone to film with. And here we were that jumped in. So that Teresa Went to Prison show was able to be made because he had us to bounce off of and has someone to talk to on it. And I don't think people get the ins and out of production all the time, or what it is. And they'll they love to say well, you guys don't have crazy drama, but there's a small 5% handful of people who.
So here's my thing. I've always thought Joe and Melissa were stupid for not capitalizing off of season 6. A lot of fans of Real Housewives of New Jersey hate season 6, but for Leah, I enjoyed the chaos. I enjoyed the pure unadulterated shitstorm that it was. I enjoyed it. And I've always looked at Joe and Melissa as why did y'all not capitalize off of that? Teresa was going to the pokey, and y'all could have took this show and really made it your own, where it wasn't predicated on Teresa being there, but you couldn't do it. You couldn't do it. And that's why I always laugh when people are like, it's not the Teresa show. It's not, but then again, it is. A huge portion of why people turn in to watch Real Housewives of New Jersey is to see Teresa. I'm not one of them because I think the show could possibly do well without her or go on without her. But I do also understand that there are people who mainly watch this show because of Teresa, because they've seen her since season 1. And it's been 12 years, y'all. We on season 12. I also think it was in poor taste for Joe to especially be had we not filmed with Joe Giudice, their kids wouldn't have eaten. And it's you were supposed to do those things. If you love your nieces, then you were supposed to step up as their uncle or as their aunt and make sure that they had food and room and board. You were supposed to do that. So you don't get a pat on the back for that. And I get where Melissa is coming from in the sense where she's why not you thank us for helping move the show along? But you wanted to be on the show. If Joe called you, as much as y'all say y'all hate Joe Giudice, you still filmed with him for that special. So you don't hate him that much because you wanted a check and you still wanted to make sure your partnership with Bravo was still there so you could continue. Like Melissa said, Melissa and Teresa were the only ones asked back for season 7. Well, girl, what was you gonna tell them no? Like, no, no, ma'am, no, ma'am. I just feel like to me, they were always dumb for not capitalizing on that. Because had it been me and my man, oh, we would have kept filming. And when she got back, then she could have integrated into the clique, and we could have kept it moving. But I would have definitely took ownership of, like, we kept this afloat because of us. Like, because we didn't have you here, we didn't talk about your children, we didn't have none of that. It was just me and my family. But they can't say that because everybody stopped filming once Teresa went to jail. So it always does look like y'all need Teresa, and that's y'all fault for not being smart enough to figure that out. But let's get into this reunion. That wasn't needed. Saying I didn't feel like this was needed. Like, honestly, if I had to rate this overall, like, season, including the 3-part reunion, I give it like a C. Like, it's like a good solid like 76. Like, it wasn't worthy enough to be a B, but it definitely wasn't worthy enough to be a D. But like, this 3rd part of the reunion didn't feel needed, in my opinion. Like, I was like, okay, this is cute, but I'm like, we didn't really learn anything like new. So I felt like they could have left the 2nd part where it was. The only reason why they filmed this 3rd part was honestly for the husbands, and that was it. And then once they left, it really wasn't, there was no need once they left. They could have ended once the husbands left and toasted, and everybody could have went home. I will say though, they disrespected the entire FUCK out of Tracy. And y'all know, if y'all watch my reviews, I was not feeling Tracy. But the fact to have that lady like come there dressed up, and we even saw pictures of her sitting on stage in a chair, for them then to like cut her out of the whole entire reunion, I think is OD disrespectful. Like, that's mad disrespectful, because there's pictures of her there. There's pictures of her on Bravo Insider of her outfits, and y'all legitimately just was like, she wasn't needed. Now, I'm wondering if they didn't add her because Tiki wasn't there, because there was no pictures of her and Tiki together like the other husbands. But that also lends to the fact that I really think that the only reason Tracy got this spot was because of her husband. And it also makes me think that the only reason why Tracy wasn't given like a full-time position, even though we have multiple, like, we have pictures of her doing her intro when they do the whole going to a different scene of the housewife, and then there's also pictures of her of Tiki and their daughters doing like the backdrop part, and I'm like, it has to be because Tiki wasn't able to film with them on a regular basis because his schedule was too busy. Because it makes no sense to me that they would invite this lady and then just discard her like that. Like, I felt like that was mad disrespectful, like so disrespectful. And then I noticed that she had to be on stage because in certain scenes when they were doing like wide shots, they would cut off Melissa because she was sitting beside Melissa, but you would only, when they would wide shot it, you would only see like a part of Melissa's leg and maybe her arm, just to be like, oh, Melissa's there, but you couldn't see Tracy. Like, they wouldn't pan out all the way. So I just was like, dang, like, who did Tracy piss off at Bravo where they was like, she don't need to be in none of this, like none of this. I just felt bad for the lady. But the episode opens up and they're still talking about Bill's affair. They asked Jennifer how long was the affair, and she was like 2 months. She asked him, like, do you want a divorce? And he was like, no, I don't want a divorce. Well, he had to go down to Miami, and she told her brother she didn't trust him going to Miami, so she went after him to go to Miami. She said Bill was turned on at the fact that she chased him, which could not be me. And it reignited, like, I guess, the passion in their relationship, and they decided to work on their marriage or never bring up the situation again. Dolores chimes in and basically says, like, if your husband's remorseful, you probably will 9 times out of 10 take him back. Frank wasn't remorseful. I gave him the phone to call the girl to break up with her, but he didn't do it. So, you know, it was crazy. So then they were like, well, did you feel like relieved about it? And Jennifer was like, yeah, like, too. Like, she was like, me, Jennifer, as a person by herself, yes, because she had to cry alone a lot of the time because she had her baby. All, like, you know, their families were around. and she couldn't cry in front of her kids or her parents because they agreed not to tell them. But Jennifer, with her kids, she felt bad for them because here we are having to explain to them that, like, yes, daddy cheated, and this is what transpired. So the kids were scared that either their parents were going to get a divorce, or like what, they didn't know what was going on. So Margaret says that, she felt bad in the sense of revealing this because for the past 4 years, Jen had been villainous, and she really didn't believe that Jennifer was very much heartbroken. She felt like Jennifer was putting on, and that that offended Jennifer, because Jennifer was like, why would I fake my emotions? Like, why would I was processing it because I hadn't been able to process it in those 10 years. And Margaret makes a point about, like, if their relationship was so good and so perfect, Jennifer wouldn't be crumbling. And then you got Jackie in the amen section, like, and I'm like, Jackie, see, this is why I can't do you, because last season, over a rumor, you was breaking down. Like, oh my gosh, like, oh my God, why is everyone attacking me? But now, like, but if it wasn't true, why were you crying? Like, why were you crying, Jackie? So that to me pisses me off with Jackie, where it's like, if their relationship was so perfect, she wouldn't be feeling this way. But if your relationship, or if everything with you and Evan was so good, why were you breaking down the same way that Jennifer was? That's why people don't see it for you, girl. So, like, everybody was surprised by Jennifer's crying. I will say, I'm getting tired of them trying to make Jennifer this such villainous person, when, in my opinion, they've all been villainous. Like, they've all been villainous to a certain degree. So I was just like, Jennifer isn't just this horrible person that they try to paint her out to be. So they continue. They talk about everything. Margaret basically said that, like, she felt like her and Jennifer, like, made headway, especially, like, when they had that lunch. We find out that Margaret gave Jennifer her, like, personal therapist, which I think is, like, that's the thing. That's like an olive branch, because Margaret really didn't have to do that for Jennifer. But I think that also is a credit that Margaret really did feel bad for what she did. Like, she didn't really think it was going to hurt Jennifer in that way. I guess, like, they've been saying they've seen Jennifer be such a villain, which I don't agree with. But they thought maybe she was just going to roll with it, and she didn't. So she didn't like the fact that she saw Jennifer breaking down in that manner. We then get to talk about Margaret and Marge Sr. And we unfortunately find out that Marge Sr. is suffering from PTSD with everything going on in Ukraine and in Russia. And she tells, like, this really heartbreaking story about how when Marge Sr. and her family, like, fled the country to come to America, her older brother didn't leave because he had a wife and kids, and the wife didn't want to leave her family because her family wasn't leaving Hungary. And Margaret was breaking down because she said that it took years for them to reconnect after that, because they couldn't get out of Hungary once it got really bad. So that was, I mean, and I also think, like Jennifer said when she was like, I never knew this about Margaret, because Margaret doesn't share too much. Like, Margaret shares what's salacious in her life, but she doesn't share what's genuinely going on with her. You know what I mean? Like, all the lawsuits we've heard about Margaret, we haven't even met Margaret's kids. Like, I think Margaret has her own kids before she got with Jan, her ex-husband. And even with Joe, we haven't met Joe's kids. So it's like, we really don't know too much about Margaret like that. So I think it was nice last season when she shared about the her trauma. And when I say nice, I'm not saying like, ooh, I was happy to hear about it. It was like nice, like, okay, there is more to Margaret than the whole, like, me and my husband got together after we cheated on our exes thing. If you know what I mean. Like, it's good to hear that there's more to one person other than that one moment in time that they keep harping on. So next thing you know, the husbands come out, and that's when we get to the nitty gritty. Next thing we got is the husbros. They're on stage. And one thing is, I like the husbros on Jersey because I think it goes. Jersey to me is like legitimately a full and complete ensemble cast because the husbands are included. and it's like to the 10th degree here. Whereas if you look at other franchises, yes, the husbands interact and they might have nice banter, but it doesn't seem like they hang out outside the show. So like when the girls get into rifts or like beefs, they're more willing to stay out of it because they're not clicked up or friends with the other person. It's like, this is what the girls do. We just are like background characters. Whereas with the husbros on here, it's like, no, we all are friends. We all hang out. We interwoven and intermingling. But I do wish they would keep it to a minimum sometimes. I don't need a whole episode focused on them. Like that whole Evan and Bill thing, that was not needed. I mean, I appreciate it, but then when I look back at it, it was like, we really didn't need to have this moment. You know what I mean? But they go around, they ask questions. Everybody seems to be doing straight. You know, we found out that Joe Benigno got like the bags underneath his eyes removed, and they look nice. He does look a little more youthful. They asked Louis how he was doing. Louis basically was like, you know, at first they were like, how do you feel about this being your first time? And he was like, it was horrible. But he was like, JK, he was just like, he was overwhelmed and he was nervous and he felt judged by the group. But all in all, it was okay. Bill says he's doing all right. We find out Frank started lying out the gate. They were asking, Andy asked, what's his name, Frank, like, hey, how's it feel to be living with your adult children? Frank was like, you know, I think he said, you know, it's different when you were changing diapers and doing this and that. And Dolores was like, bro, you ain't never changed a diaper. And he was like, well, I thought about it. I said, shut up, Frank. And we found out that David was the one that asked Frank to live with him. So that to me is interesting as well. That's very interesting. So we found out that Frank really don't have balls. Like his balls might have went inside or shrunk because of too many roids he was taking. But I was like, okay. They asked him about David, like, does David ask about Dolores? And he was like, not really. He just asked, like, how is she doing? It's never, like, prying. We found out that him and Polly don't get along. And like I said on my last video, I think that Polly and Frank just have their personalities are too similar. They look like two meatheads, and they ain't clicking. We find out that Frank, I will give Frank credit that he has taken the initiative to, like, build a relationship with Polly, but Polly is very, like, distant to it. Frank lets us know that he asked Polly to come out to dinner with him so they could get things like straight or set a foundation, and Polly didn't go. He do be calling that man Buzz Lightyear, which is funny because he kind of do look like Buzz, but it's wrong because Dolores was not happy about that. And basically, Polly doesn't like the relationship between Dolores and Frank, and that makes sense. It makes sense. It really does make sense. So we get to Louis and they ask about the video, the infamous video. And Louis explained himself really well. And I felt like, why didn't you just do that at the Shore House? But we end up finding out, like, at that moment, that was his first time on camera with the group. So he was just very nervous and uncomfortable and just he didn't know what to do. So what he says is, like, because when Louis says no, he was breaking up with the girl in the video, they were like, no. Andy was like, that felt like a proposal. So Louis explains that he got one of his business partners invited him onto like this man's retreat. They all had on like gym shorts or swim shorts, and they were running back and forth into the oceans, I guess telling the ocean or doing something where they were recommitting themselves to their wives or recommitting themselves to whatever to be better partner to their significant others. And he was saying that he wanted to break up with the girl, but everybody at the retreat was like coercing him and like pushing him to recommit himself to the girl. So that's what he did in the video. He was like, he didn't want to, but he felt like he had to because everybody was telling him that he had to. But when he got home, they ended up breaking up because she had a prenup waiting for him saying that they could get married and that he had to pay her $1 million for them to get married. So he was like, I ain't want it. He was like, I don't want this. So I thought it was kind of condescending for Joe and Margaret to be like, that's what we wanted. That's what we wanted, Louis. When I'm like, all of y'all were uncomfortable the first time y'all got on the show. It just felt condescending. I don't know if they meant it that way, and I don't think they did, but to me, if I was Louis, I would have had an attitude. Because I'd have been like, because the thing is, like, Louis didn't have to tell them this stuff. Yes, it's out there. You should explain yourself if you're on this. You have this platform to clear things up, but y'all don't have to push him to do it. Like, he should have been given the opportunity for himself to do it. Teresa shouldn't have been telling him not to explain himself. Y'all shouldn't have been like trying to force him to explain himself. Like, I feel like if they would have gave the man a time to like get it out, or gave him a safe space where he felt like he could explain things, then I don't think we would be at this point where we're at right now. So, what's it called? Next thing you know, Andy brings up all the allegations or things that's been out there about him, saying that he's emotionally and physically abusive, that he wants sex all the time, that nobody in his family likes him, and things of that nature. And what Louis says is that, and it was kind of like, so, because the thing is like, I do believe these women to a certain extent, but I also believe Louis to a certain extent as well. When he was like, we were in a toxic relationship on both parts, and I wouldn't call it abusive, but it was toxic. And I think that's one thing that I think a lot of people have to understand, that two parties in a relationship can be toxic and abusive. I just feel like what's the word? It does look suspect on the women. It's like y'all waited till he got on TV to like air him out this way. Or maybe they have been airing him out and it just became like it exploded mainly because he is on this show. But I do feel like on both parties were toxic, because the way in which these stories have been coming out have really been like, oh, we got sources say Louis did this, and this. It would be totally different if one of the ladies came out, put herself out there and was like, we had this, and this. And it's like, okay, I don't know, because I don't want to sound like I'm victim shaming, because to me, the whole situation is just a kerfuffle, because it does seem like the women, because I read posts from the other women that they were toxic too, and it does seem like Louis is toxic in and of himself. So I don't know, y'all. I'm gonna let it go. We unfortunately found out, because of all the bad press, he lost his job. Like, even though he started the company, they asked him to step down so the company could keep going. So that doesn't mean, I don't know if that means like he doesn't get residuals from the company, but I guess it's not as high because he's not working there every single day. He talks about they talk about the abuse allegations and referring to like the physical abuse. And he basically was like, I never put my hands on anybody. And I kind of believe him, because we haven't had like anybody come out and say that, like, we haven't had anyone confirm it. We just had people say that he did this thing. And I feel like if the women have been so vocal about the things that, like, prior transgressions that he's done, I think somebody would have been like, he's lying. Here's the paperwork to prove it. You know what I mean? So he was like, I never did. Basically, they would be in arguments and his ex-wife would call the police. And right at that point, they were arguing about custody. So, you know, them situations be messy. They be messy. So then Margaret basically says that, like, she didn't want anything bad to happen to Louis. Even when he shared about losing his job, she just wanted him to get ahead of the story, because that's how she is. Get ahead of the story, change the narrative, or sway public opinion to your side, and then move forward. But I feel like that's not Margaret's job. That wasn't Margaret's job. It does seem like Margaret does genuinely care about Teresa, because I actually was surprised that Teresa gave Margaret a tissue when she was crying about her mom going through PTSD and about the whole her uncle and the Hungary situation. So I think there's like a slight amount of she care about her. But I just think that Margaret overstepped. Like Teresa told you multiple times, like, dead it, I don't want to talk about it with you. And you kept persisting. So it makes you look bad in the sense of, like, there was no need for you to bring it up constantly if the lady told you to let it go. And I get Margaret wanting to help, but, like, sometimes, and I've learned that, sometimes people don't want your help. And you helping can further cause more detriment to that person or to that situation. So you got to fall back. And I think Margaret just should have fell back and moved on to something else. What I find interesting was that Louis was agreeing with Margaret a lot. Like, a lot. Like, he agreed with when Margaret was like, I just wanted you to get ahead of the story. And he was like, I don't have no hate towards you. And the thing is, like, as many red flags that have popped up about Louis, I don't know. Maybe he is slightly good for Teresa, because it seems like he's able to let things go and move forward. And she's just the type of person who likes to stay in things. Because I was actually very much, I like the fact that he kept saying, like, I'm letting it go. Like, I just want to move forward. I don't fault you for anything. Like, Margaret, we good. I want to move forward if I'm going to be on this show. And I think that's what you got to do, for real. So they talked about wedding plans. I thought it was funny that Louis' favorite show is Sex and the City, and all he wanted to do was rent out a diner and, like, you know, they go get married at the courthouse and then eat at a diner. But now that he's with Teresa, he understands that she wants more for their wedding, so he's down to do more. We then get to Evan and Jackie. Evan says that he feels like she's been more accountable because everyone knows about her eating disorder, which I can understand that. Margaret tries to apologize to Bill. I did like the fact that Bill seemed to take a lot of accountability. He was just like, you know, the kids were worried that we were going to get a divorce, the younger kids. He was like, I'm grateful that Jennifer was able to forgive me for making such a huge mistake, and we were able to move on because I love my family and I love my wife. He also was like, I can't blame everybody else or anyone, because at the end of the day, if I wouldn't have cheated, we wouldn't be here. So I think he did the right thing by taking accountability. And I think he was like, he's not really mad at Margaret anymore. He just wants to let it go and move on. And I do like the fact that Jennifer kept harping on Margaret that my kids were collateral damage. And Margaret felt bad. And I think that the thing is like, when people get on these reality shows, I think you forget that there are little kids involved, especially if someone has kids. But I also think that people that have kids have to understand that, like, if you gonna play this game, you got to understand your kids might be collateral damage. They might be. They might be. So I can't really totally fault Margaret, but I can also understand where Jennifer is coming from by feeling hurt. So we then get to Bill versus Joe. So they're talking about the hand kerfuffle between Melissa and Jennifer down at the shore. And basically, here's my thing. Andy don't like Jennifer. Andy does not like Jennifer, because every time Jennifer would try to make a point, especially when it came to the Frank and Dolores situation about her digging on Evan, he kept cutting her off, or he would not allow her to make her point without, like, interjecting. And he allowed everyone else to, like, talk and, like, to get their point across. He even will interpret things for Teresa where she can't get her thoughts out. So it's like, we get it. You don't like Jennifer, but, like, I'm gonna need you to be an actual host and be non-biased sometimes. So they're talking about the whole little spat that Jennifer and Melissa had. Like I said in my review on that episode, both of them was wrong. Melissa shouldn't have walked towards Jennifer. She could have walked around that couch and left that house, and Jennifer shouldn't have grabbed her. Like, I get it. Jennifer thought she was going to do something, so she grabbed her, but she shouldn't have did that. She should have either backed up and let Melissa go on about her business, but she shouldn't, like, we can't be getting to that point. So Bill was saying that Joe was entitled to his emotions, but Jennifer spoke up and was like, I think it's crazy that you thought he was going to take your side over his wife. And then Joe tried to say some stupid crap about men being more stable about this, when it's like, bro, there's countless videos of you fighting at your own child's christening. You fought up in the up in the mountains when y'all was doing that up with your brother-in-law up in the mountains. Then you was like, he put my mother in a effing grave. You did all of that. So in what way are you stable? In your thick-headed skull, Joe, are you stable? Bro. And that's just like, bruh. So then they tried to, like, get Bill, Like they tripped up Bill when Bill was basically like, because Andy said, well, you said that Jennifer was out of line. And when they played it back, Bill was basically, was like, emotions were hot. Like everybody was doing too much, basically. And he was like, two wrongs don't make a right. But we found out that they went on a double date with Joe and Melissa. And they were like, we good now. We good now. So they're saying like they're good. Then Melissa was saying that like Jennifer was asking for it with the whole beef. But my thing was like, your husband be jumping into things and can't handle when people come back at his neck. So I was just like, girl, shut up. Shut up. So they started talking about the whole Jennifer digging thing. And this is what I mean about Andy not liking Jennifer. Because what we found out that like Jennifer wasn't digging. She was just, as she asked a question where she was like, Frank basically told Bill that he met the alleged girl that everyone was talking about that Evan had been cheating on Jackie with. And what I thought was perplexing to me was then out of nowhere, Dolores calls Jennifer a see you next Tuesday. That word doesn't offend me, so I wouldn't have been offended. But I was just kind of like, had Jennifer done that to Dolores, everybody on that cast, including Andy, would have been asking for Jennifer's head. And I found it weird that Dolores had that outburst, because I thought based off the trailers that Jennifer said some out of pocket stuff to Dolores and that's why she went there. But Dolores, like, it was weird because Jennifer didn't say nothing. Jennifer was just like, Frank, like legit, you had a conversation with Bill, and then that's when we get where Jennifer's like, back me up, Bill. And Bill was like, yeah, me and Frank had a talk. Frank said such and such, and I went back to my wife and told her. And even Margaret was like, Joe be telling me everything y'all be talking about. So I was just like, she didn't dig. And Jennifer was like, I want vindication to prove that I wasn't digging. I just asked a question. And I feel like they were trying to like gloss over that when she made a point. Like, she wasn't just calling people like, girl, this and this, da 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 da. She legit was just like, oh, is that the girl? And then the only part that I had to look at Jennifer weird is when Jennifer was like, I don't care. I just was asking a question. And I was like, well, if you didn't care, you wouldn't ask that question. And then Margaret was like, we all kind of care a little too much and we need to care less. And so then they moved on. The men leave. Joe has a stupid, lame thank you. Like, it was stupid. I don't care. So then that's when Louis tells us about the whole him losing his job, about the rumors, and Margaret and Teresa happens. And Louis was like, if you like, when he was leaving the stage after they had that little riff, Louis was like, Teresa, if you love me, you will calm down. And he was like, you're making a big mistake by acting this way. And I ain't like that, because it kind of felt abusive. I ain't even gonna lie. Like, with all the allegations out there, it felt abusive. I'm not even gonna lie. I was like, ooh, I'm making a big mistake by acting this way. What you about to do to me? But then Louis walked around and was like shaking everybody's hand. He gave Margaret a hug. And I like the fact that Jennifer was like sweet, like telling Teresa, like, sweetie, he's trying to move things forward. And that's the thing with Teresa. Teresa stays in certain places when she needs to move forward. Like, you're beating a dead horse at this point about your whole drama and beef between how you feel about Margaret and Louis and her talking about Louis. At this point, sis, you gonna have to let it go. Like pay it and let it go. So we then get to the whole fight about, when Teresa hit them cups on Margaret, and she basically was like, she tried to stay calm all season, and she just reached her breaking point, and she feels like Margaret should take accountability for that. Margaret gets mad, and she's just like, I didn't do nothing. And here's my thing with Margaret, and here's my thing with Teresa. Because at this point, we basically at the end of the road. Teresa's feelings are hurt that Margaret brought the information to the show, because she was like, if you were my friend, you wouldn't have done that. You wouldn't have shed a light on this when you keep saying, I've been through all of these tumultuous times and all of this, and you kept beating it, like you kept trying to railroad me, and that, like, you can't do that. Like, and I think that's the issue that Teresa has, is like, if you were my close friend and I told you to let it go, you should have let it go. But to Margaret's credit, like, sis, all of this stuff was already out there. And I think when Teresa keeps saying, like, you're the one putting the rumors out there. I think she's meaning to say, like, you brung it to the show when you shouldn't have brung it to the shows. You just should have let everything been out there, because she was like, all the rumors we've heard about you and your lawsuits, no one's ever brung it to the show, which I'm like, that's y'all's fault. Y'all should have been bring them lawsuits to the show. If Margaret can bring outside mess, y'all can bring in the mess here too. So then Margaret has a moment where she just gets really mad, and she was like, I never broke out to that shop. Like, and I get it. I get where Margaret is going. Margaret's talking about, you told Danielle to pull my hair. You called me and see you next Tuesday. You thrown drinks on me. And then Teresa's like, well, because she was like, I thought you know I'm a good person. That's why I'm always out there. No, Teresa said something about like being a good person, and Margaret was like, no, you're psycho, and everyone laughs. And my only thing with Margaret is like, why did you feel the need to like want to help Louis win? Like, that to me feels like disingenuous. I just feel like I feel like you wanted to bring that to the show because it was out there and it was salacious, but the whole like, we wanted him to win, and I'm like, that's not your job. Like, let that man win on his own. Like, why? Like, you should. That's why I really feel like Margaret just should have fell back. Excuse me, y'all. She just should have fell back. But I just feel like at this point, Teresa's feelings are just really hurt, and when Teresa's hurt, she holds a grudge. And honestly, like I've always been told, or like what people, like I've said to people, feelings aren't facts. They're not. Like, unless you got the facts to back up your feelings aren't facts. Like, Teresa can definitely be hurt by what Margaret did, but the facts prove that like all this stuff was out here and people were going to be talking about it anyway, so you might as well talk about it and get it over with. They end the show. Jackie says the show saved her life. Dolores says she loves this cast, even though she called Jennifer a see you next Tuesday. Margaret says she had had beautiful moments with Jennifer at the lunch and with Marge Sr., and she loved that. Jennifer says she's working harder on evolving as a person and owning her mistakes and taking accountability. Melissa says she was glad that people knew about saw Antonia's recovery and being like that she's back to being her old self. And Teresa said it was a hard season and that she was just upset about Margaret bringing the tea to the, bringing all of that to the show. So I'm about to give y'all my final thoughts. I know, y'all, I did not talk about this, but I'm going to feed it in this video somewhere. Andy doing that whole shut up. He was tweaking. He had to be. Because I was just like, why was that your go-to to just like get red in the face and tell everyone, shut up. Shut up. I'm trying to move the story along. It's time. As much as I like Andy, it's time we start finding somebody that might be able to handle these women a lot better, because you shouldn't be telling your coworkers to shut up, even if you are their boss. Like, there was no reason for him to do that. Like, yes, Margaret and Teresa were going back and forth and talking over each other and being completely annoying, but there should have been a way where he could have been like, hey, we pausing. Like, everyone needs to take a moment. Y'all take a deep breath, because right now it's a hamster wheel and we just going around in circles and we ain't getting nowhere other than him doing that. And then he gonna tweet, I lost my cool. No, you look stupid. You are a father of 2 children now. That was not needed, Andy. That was totally not needed. Like I said in the beginning, this whole season was seaworthy. The main beefs was Jennifer and Margaret and Jennifer and Teresa. Really, at some point, we got some type of resolution with Jennifer and Margaret, but we never got it with Teresa and Margaret. I feel like since they're adding like so many new people, because if you don't know, supposedly a friend of Teresa's is filming, and then a friend of Margaret's is filming, and then a friend of Melissa's is filming for the show. So a lot of people have been speculating that they're going to start letting people go if these 3 ladies do really well. Word on the curve is that what's her name? Jackie got demoted to friend of, but I don't know how factual that is. and to me, I don't know if this means that Jackie got demoted because of Bravo, because she did share a lot, or if she demoted herself. Because the ladies have been known to like be like, you know what, I can't share too much about my life, so I'll just be a friend of. And then the season they come back as a full-time cast member, but nobody knows. It's just gossip, gossip on the streets about whether or not Jackie got demoted and whether or not these women are actually like filming and being around. So going forward, I hope we get new beefs or new drama. I'm sick of the Teresa versus Joe and Melissa. At this point, it's a hamster wheel of bull, and I'm tired of being on the hamster wheel. But yeah, those are my final thoughts. Thank you for sticking with me throughout this whole entire season. And I hope you come back. I hope you subscribe to the other shows that I'm watching. But yeah, y'all, drop down in the comments below and let me know your thoughts. Remember to be bravely authentic, and I'm out, y'all. Deuces.